But I do want to acknowledge that we're meeting now here in Ngunnawal land. I am in Ngunnawal land. Ecky's probably on some other country, I think, and we might have people listening from all over. And I'd like to acknowledge all of the elders, past, present, and emerging, and pay special respect to any First Nations people who are out there listening. It's a delight if you're here to have you listening, and it'd be lovely to have you chipping in with questions as well. I'm going to do a very brief intro, and then what we do with this is we ask the same 10 questions each time, and it's really fun because we get completely different answers, and that's sort of the fun bit. And then we'll come back at the end for sort of 15 minutes and we can all just have a bit of a chat and a reflect. And it's a good little forum to sort of learn different stories. So we're here tonight with Ericha Smyth, and Ecky is interning for us at the Greens. And Ecky is studying a Bachelor of International Relations at the ANU with Southeast Asian Studies minor. And she's been involved in a lot of Southeast Asian affairs, including PPIA ACT, which I don't know what it is, and interning with the Victorian government, who I'm sure are nowhere near as good as the ACT government, I'm certain. And she's been a delegate at some international conferences, and Ecky's particularly interested in promoting and enhancing Southeast Asian literacy. And we also have Wisnu, who interned for us at the Assembly. Thanks, Wes. It was a lot of fun. Wes did some really amazing work for us on wildlife corridors and bee corridors, which was great. And Wes is a Master of Public Policy at the ANU. And as an Indonesian, Wes spent years volunteering at a youth-led non-government organisation providing space for young Indonesian and Australians to connect and share their culture. And Wes also has a lot of hobbies and other interesting things that he does. He fences and he does all sorts of fascinating things. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to throw the first question to Ecky. Ecky, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what drives you?
Ooh, okay. That's a very open question. I guess what really drives me, well, first, I move around quite a bit. Growing up, I moved around quite a lot. But my journey in Australia began in, I don't know if you know of the place Bendigo.
Yes.
Yeah. So my journey began in Bendigo, and that's where I started volunteering for a lot of things, and it actually provoked me to get in touch with my Indonesian heritage as well. And it determined my direction for, I guess, the next 5 years or so. And so from Bendigo, I moved to Canberra, and there I was really interested in promoting Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia was my life, and it was something that drove me, especially in the university space, especially among my friends, where we debated about Southeast Asian issues, and I think what the good thing about university is you're surrounded by like-minded youth who are also interested in that space. And I think what I really like to advocate for is gender empowerment, youth empowerment. And that's one of the reasons why when I moved to Canberra, I volunteered and joined as many student organizations as I could, because I genuinely enjoy it, and I genuinely enjoy being engaged with community and advocating for issues, advocating for marginalized communities. And I think as well, when I was in Indonesia, I looked like the majority Javanese Muslim background as well. But then when I moved to Australia, I was now considered an ethnic minority. And that's what kind of repositioned my mindset. And it also made me rethink on how I interact with society, interact with community. And I think, yeah, that's what drives me.
Yeah, that was marvelous. Thank you. That was absolutely marvelous. It's interesting, isn't it, that recalibration when you're suddenly the minority. It's what Ian was saying at this time. And Wes, tell us what drives you.
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to I guess say a little bit about myself, and that's pretty much similar to Erica. I like it. I think like we're very much interested in the same field in terms of like youth to youth connection, and I think in terms of like what drives me, I think it's that particular issue of for me personally, when I was in year 12, I got the opportunity to do a 10-day cultural exchange program to Darwin at Canberra College. And that's when I realized a lot of Australians don't really know too much about Indonesia, only Bali. And so that became a little bit of like the drive for me to kind of like provide the more information for Australians to understand that Indonesia is not just about Bali. And I think trying to connect people, young Australians and young Indonesians, is something that like I like to do, and I've been doing that for a few years now. And like it could be done through a proper, like things that Erica and I are doing, NGO volunteering, or just personal friends. Actually, at the moment, I'm actually calling in from the land of Gadigal people in Sydney, which is a bit ironic because this is like my culture, my Canberra. But I have currently been invited by a friend of mine to kind of like come visit his city in Sydney. And so I'm currently like in the process of cooking food. And I think that's something that also drives me to kind of like connecting people through food as well. I'm not saying that I'm a great cook, but my friend said that it's great. So that's fantastic. But yeah, I think I also realized that there's a lot of like misunderstanding between like Indonesians and Australians, and I think I understand that the work that I'm doing at the moment is pretty much too minuscule to have like big of an impact. But I hope that from that small minuscule drop of the water, and it ripples through to like the bigger effect as well. So that's pretty much what drives me to be more involved in this particular area, and also trying to eventually intern at your place, Joe, because I would like to understand what the how it works in local Canberran assembly, and to understand if there are things that I could learn and potentially bring back to my own organizations and hopefully to Indonesia as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Wes. That was marvelous. That was also marvelous. Yeah, little things turn into big things quite quickly. I think it's good in a good way. So Wes, tell me what culture means to you. You've already mentioned food, and that's sometimes where people start, but you don't have to. What does culture mean to you?
I think so. I think as I was kind of like reading the entire understanding of culture, I realized that I don't really know what my culture is at the moment, and that's a bit complicated. And I'm sure Erica might be able to like talk about that more. But I think in terms of, if we talk about, in my opinion, if we talk about culture in a way that means heritage or lineage, then I am proudly Indonesian. As you mentioned as well, like food, like I would like to be one of the people to kind of like to kind of like introduce Indonesian cultures to local Australians through the work of like the batik arts, our national treasure, which is arts. Which is batik, which is it's like a very specific way of tie-dyeing cloths, and also through food. And so because I'm Javanese by heritage, so I cook a lot of Javanese food whenever I hang out with my friends. And then so that's why I believe that's one way for me to look at what culture means. However, if we kind of discuss culture in a way that means the social norms or the tradition of a particular region or area, I personally don't really identify too much as Indonesians. And that's because I believe that there are some social norms and traditions from Indonesia, which I don't really particularly adhere to or subscribe to anymore. And so it kind of puts me in a kind of like weird situation where I'm not really Australian because I'm an international student from Indonesia, but then I understand that my values and my perspective tend to be in line more with local Canberran cultures, Australian culture in general. And the same thing with Indonesia is like, I don't feel like I'm Indonesian enough because there are some traditional customs and social norms that Indonesians tend to subscribe to that I don't really believe in anymore. And so it's such an interesting, like topic, culture. But I feel like I could talk about this a bit more. But yeah,
We'll come back to
maybe I can like shed light on that. I think Ericha is a particular more interesting position because I think she's kind of like the more extreme version of me. So like she's like Aussie Indo specifically, and so I feel like her perspective would be like much more enlightening.
Becky, I'd love to hear your answer to this, what culture means.
Yeah.
It's really this last point of, I don't particularly feel like it's my culture because some of those are things I identify with and some of those I don't. That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah, no, I think culture with me is a bit loaded because I am half Indonesian and I'm half Australian. My father is white, but I'm not visibly white. And I'm not visibly of mixed heritage either, right? But when I was living in Indonesia, I always told everyone, oh, I'm Australian. But they get confused because I don't look like what you would imagine Australia to be in like mainstream movies or mainstream media, right? Because I'm just going to say out there, but mainstream media right now of what Australia is, like representation of Australia is mostly white, right? And historically has been white. So when I moved to Australia, this is actually the perception that I had, but going to Melbourne, going to Canberra, even pockets in Bendigo, there are multicultural communities. But then I'm also confronted with the question, where are you really from? Even when I am in Australia. And whether this is due to my accent or whether this is due to how I look like, Bendigo, Canberra, even Sydney, I still get it, right? And it's just something that I think I have to accept right now. But I think as well with culture, when I was growing up in my teenage years, it was definitely difficult with that identity struggle of where are you really from? Because as I said before in the introduction, I did move around quite a bit when I was younger. And having spent some time in Australia now, I think when we're having conversations about culture, it's important to think of both visible culture and non-visible culture. So when usually when people, and initially when I first moved here, I thought of culture as, food, and it is like food and dancing and like batik. I love my batik. I'm wearing batik today. And it's, our history, right? But I think as well with non-visible culture, and Wes touched upon this with his conversation about norms and societal structures, that's something that I think needs to be brought forth into the limelight, the spotlight a little bit more. And to me, culture in Australia, from my experiences in engaging with multicultural communities, I think it's the resilience that people hold in being able to retain culture in a society that says they celebrate it, but at the same time opposes some of it. Do you know what I mean? For example, how I talked about multiculturalism and pockets of multiculturalism, even in the most regional rural towns of Australia. And Australia does have a multicultural history with the Afghanistan camels back hundreds of years ago, as well as like Indonesian traders with like indigenous people in Australia, right? There is a multicultural history, but I think right now, then it's not within the dominant narrative, right? So I think for me, culture is that resilience to be able to oppose that narrative and to kind of insert your perspective and share it to the community. Yeah. Sorry, that's like a very long answer.
This is interesting. We're getting a lot of discussion about identity being in the minority or the majority, and the narrative that society imposes over it. This is it's always fascinating, this one. So yeah. A simpler question, Eki, what's your connection to Canberra?
My connection to Canberra, other than my internship. Joking. I'm joking. I go to the ANU, so that's part of my connection to Canberra. But not only that, I think it's definitely the opportunities that I've gained here as from student organization, from universities. I think it's the friendships and the connections that I've made in Canberra. When I moved to Canberra, it was, I think, similar to most people my age, like 18, right? You're in a completely different environment where you know absolutely no one. And maybe you've moved from another country, or maybe you've moved from another town. But sometimes you meet people, you make connections that make you come back to Canberra. I know that Canberra has a reputation of being the boring city of Australia, but I genuinely like it. I genuinely enjoy the landscape. I enjoy the community here, like the culture. I mean, my culture, my Canberra. Not only that, but I genuinely enjoy the environment, and not necessarily the sunsets. I mean, the sunsets are pretty, but I enjoy how multicultural it is compared to like a lot of other places perhaps. And I enjoy that it has a close proximity to politics as well. It's something that really connects with me, just the advocacy that occurs within the city and how people come here to do climate strikes. People come here when they want to advocate for something, right? And it's like a shared experience. Yeah, I guess that's how I connect to Canberra.
You've done a very good job of making Canberra sound not boring. So well done. Wes, tell us your connection to Canberra.
My connection with Canberra, I think, my friends. I think that's my connection specifically. For everyone else, I guess just a bit of a background story. I'm currently here on a scholarship funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And so when I was thinking of choosing my degree, my university, public policy came into mind. And that's because I was recommended by my academic supervisor. She said that, ANU has one of the best public policy degree, and Canberra is a nice city to live in as well. A lot of very fresh air, nature, bushwalks, and those sound pretty interesting to me. And but I didn't really know anyone. At first I didn't know a lot of people who live in Canberra. But then, funnily enough, the moment that I got this scholarship, and I told my friends, they're like, "Hello, I'm moving back to Australia for 2 years, but to go to Canberra." And then a few of them responded saying "Hey, I'm also going to Canberra for my for the grad program and all that." And so, and that's when I realized, the first connection that I've got with Canberra has always been my friends, because they were the ones who kind of helped me out when I first got here. And for some of them, it was we're pretty much on the same boat, as I guess a transplant, if the term is correct, I believe. We didn't know what's going on in Canberra, and so we had to kind of navigate the entire city together. So I think that's pretty fun to do together with your friends. And and I feel like it's such an interesting thing at the moment, because with the scholarship comes also the responsibility of me having to go back home and help develop Indonesia. And so it's weird knowing that in 2 weeks I would have to fly out to Indonesia and have to kind of start my work, which I do not have yet. I'm still trying to find a job at the moment. But yeah, so I would have to kind of start doing that. And it's interesting, and definitely I'm feeling a bit weird knowing that I've built my life in Canberra for the last 2 years with all my friends, people that I met have been kind of like helping me out in terms of like spreading my roots, if that makes sense, in Canberra. But then having to kind of like move away again and having to kind of like relearn and readjust again. I feel like that's pretty interesting. And luckily, I've got a few friends who were pretty much on the same boat, and they also live in Jakarta, where I'm going to be moving into. And I think that should be okay. But sorry, it's been a bit of like here and there. But yes, my connection with Canberra is my friends.
Wow, you've got a big month ahead, Wes. Gosh, good luck. And references right here, anytime.
Thank you so much, Joe. Also, just want to let you know, like, Joe has been such a great supervisor. Like, definitely, like, if any one of you want to intern, like, definitely Joe.
Now, Eki, I'm going to ask you what the best thing you've experienced about living in Canberra is, and also what the worst thing is, the worst thing that you want to share. A good thing and a bad thing about that's happened in Canberra.
I'll start with the bad thing because it just popped into my head. Well, I'm in Sydney now, and I know I should never compare city to city, but I think an experience I didn't really like in Canberra was how infrequent some of the buses were. Especially like later in the night or earlier in the morning, especially like when you have an early shift at work. And sometimes there are no buses, and sometimes like you have to just get an Uber. And I think that was definitely not a nice experience. And I don't know, I think the public transport system in Canberra is pretty good, but there's definitely room for improvement. But that's just from my own experience. And, I won't delve into it, but as a woman of color walking in like weird times during the night, it never feels safe. So I think, yeah, that's probably my worst experiences in Canberra that really just popped up in my mind when that question was asked. Yeah.
Transport comes up a lot. Transport comes up a lot. Yeah. And what's the best, what was the best thing about Canberra?
Best thing about Canberra? I've made a lot of good memories in Canberra. It's kind of hard to even pick one. I think Wes can agree with me. It's just I've made some really, really beautiful memories with the people I've been surrounded with. Some of them are here with me today. And I think just sharing those experiences has even though I don't live in Canberra right now, but when I lived here, it definitely enriched my time in Canberra. And I honestly can't pick one. I must say, I do enjoy interning with the Assembly, especially throughout my research report, where I interviewed leaders and spokespersons from the multicultural community. And that, even though it was all done online because of lockdown, the connection that was made was truly, it was powerful. And hearing their stories was inspiring. And I think, I thank the Assembly as well as like ANU for giving me the opportunity to engage with them and to be able to hear where they come from, hear their grievances, but also hear how hard they've advocated for the multicultural community. And I see some people have popped in. Yeah.
Welcome everybody. I'll take that, Eki. Bad buses but good people. I think that's a fair assessment. Wes, what about you? What's the best and the worst of Canberra that you experienced?
Yeah, I guess before I start, I think I would like to say that I know that people have bits of qualms or issues with public transport in ACT, but as someone who used to live in Adelaide for a year, I was pleasantly surprised with how good the public transport in Canberra is. And but I do understand some depending on like the routes. If it's like rapid buses, then it's pretty much coming in every half an hour, and on the weekends got to be every 2.5 hours. So I understand it's a bit difficult. That's kind of like one of the good things about Canberra. There's another thing. It's the bad thing about Canberra. I think it's not necessarily just about Canberra, but and it didn't really happen to me. I've been very lucky to not have to experience this, but I don't know if you remember, but I think around sometime like this year, sometime mid-year this year or last year, there was a case of like young students pretty much like chanting and like hurling their like racist abuse to like Chinese street like vendors, and then I think that kind of disturbed me a little bit because Canberra is I've never actually I guess I could be seen as a bit sheltered, but like I wouldn't have expected like that kind of thing to happen in Canberra. I would understand if it's in Sydney or Melbourne because there's a lot of like news regarding the particular issue, but I guess that was the first kind of like instance of me understanding like this kind of thing happened in all cities in Australia and also in Indonesia as well. And then and that kind of like makes me a bit like thinking like, oh, I've been very lucky. I didn't get targeted by like these people, and I've been relatively safe. And I've got friends that I can contact if things like that were to happen, which is kind of like connected to one of the good things about Canberra is like, again, the community, like the fact that like it's such a tight-knit community. When things like that happened, the local community kind of like came in and like supported the local the Chinese vendors, and and I think that's something that I think a lot of Canberrans should really be proud of, like the fact that everyone's like tight-knit community managed to kind of like overcome like issues of like racial abuse. Of course, there's a lot of like work and homework that we have to do. Everyone has to do, and by calling out that kind of behavior. But I feel like it's a one step into the right direction in terms of like understanding that we have really, really good tight-knit community.
Yeah, that's good. COVID has stirred up a few really dark aspects of Australian culture, I think. Yeah. So, Eki, if you could change one thing about Canberra, you've been here, you know what it's like. If you could wave a magic wand, change one thing about Canberra or the many cultures we have here, what thing would you change?
There are many things I want to change. No, I'm joking.
Pick three.
I'm joking. I don't have a list. It's all right. I think what I would like to change, and this has been influenced by the recent report that I did for the Braddock office about called communities in Canberra. I understand that Canberra has a reputation of being extremely multicultural, extremely progressive, but I think that there's definitely room for improvement in especially like during the pandemic, as Wes mentioned, how targeted racist threats have been directed to the multicultural communities. I think having sort of a mechanism in response to that, and for there to be a space that will actually allow accountability, I think that's something that I really, really hope will be implemented in Canberra in the near future. Not only that, but I think greater representation as well, especially in our leadership structure. I mean, love you, Joe, love the Braddock office, but I think that we need leadership that represents the community, the multicultural community in Canberra, whether it's in government or whether it's in top tier businesses, in universities. I think that we need to engage with individuals who actually are part of the community, and it needs to be reflected in top leadership. And I think if anything could be changed about Canberra, it would be that. Yeah.
100% agree with you. You can't be what you can't see. And we've done pretty well with women in Canberra, but we are falling behind on other diversity. So, and I think we need to consciously work on that. Wes, what one thing would you change?
I actually second Erica's sentiment, so I'm not going to elaborate more. And also, I've been kind of like answering the question pretty, pretty. I'm not saying dark, but quite like such a heavy answer. So let me just say that because as I mentioned earlier, I love cooking and I love food. I think if there's one that I would like to change in Canberra is the fact that there's not a lot of Indonesian food in Canberra. I mean, then it's quite lacking. I mean, Joe, you went to like an Indonesian place just across the assembly with me, and that was great. And there are also other places like in Narabanda, Kita, and there's also Kopiku in Okana. And I think there's like one other restaurant just started to open soon, I believe, or maybe it has already opened, but just recently. And I guess at the moment, because I'm currently in Sydney visiting a friend, I'm currently located in Kensington, which is one of the, it's quite well known for the Indonesian community and a lot of Indonesian food. It's so great to just go out and then go to like a local, like nearby Indonesian, diner and just eat Indonesian food. And I feel like, definitely Canberra. I feel like Canberra can definitely benefit from like a lot more Indonesian restaurants. And I think this is something that like a friend of mine have mentioned before. Like a few years ago, there weren't a lot of if I could say like a better term, like ethnic food. There weren't a lot of ethnic food at restaurants in Canberra. But I think in the last few years, I think there's been quite an increase of like Chinese food, Vietnamese, all the Asians and Afghani food. Like I think it's been popping up, Indian as well, quite a lot of them here. And I think it's just time for Indonesian food to actually make more debut. Well, not make its debut, but like to be more prolific in Canberra. I feel like Erica can agree to that.
Yeah, definitely. I also think, actually, since some of my AIYEP friends are here in this room today, I think not only with food, but just Indonesian scholarship, like knowledge about Indonesia, if that can be intensified in Canberra, I think like so many avenues will open.
It's funny, isn't it? Indonesia is I studied Indonesian at school, but I don't think that's common. And it's so close, and we know so little. We know so little. Wes, what's your greatest hope for the future?
Oh wow, such a loaded question. I don't know if I can answer. I don't think we have the time. I think. Well, personally, I feel like my personal hope for the future is actually. I always feel like I haven't been doing a lot in Canberra and with my degree and all that, and everyone who knows me, like I'm always busy doing 1A, and you know me as well, Joe. Yeah. I've got a lot of stuff going on, but I always feel like I haven't been really doing a lot, and so and I think it's just my insecurity speaking. And I feel like my hope personally is to make sure that I hope that the things that I learn here, I hope that all the things that I learn here I can actually implement and to my future professions. Whatever that's going to be, whatever that's going to be, and I'm hoping that I could actually do well in terms of like implementing those skills in order to make better connections. As I mentioned, one of my key issues is providing the space for young Indonesian and young Australians as well. So I hope that I can continue doing that in the future, and with my current knowledge as as an intern at the ACT Greens, I hope that I could be more, I could do a bit more work in the environmental sector in Indonesia or in like another country, or maybe in Australia as well. And hopefully by just me doing that bit, hopefully it helps out it contributes like a bigger thing. But yeah.
That was a beautiful answer. Implement what you've learned. I love it. Eki, what's your one big hope for the future?
I have many hopes, but
I'm surprised.
If I were to pick one, similar to as something that I value is education and creating access as well as opportunities, especially for marginalized communities, BIPOC communities, women of color, youth. And through the experiences that I've gained, whether through the assembly, within university, or programs such as AIYEP, I hope that I can utilize that knowledge and, similar to Wes, implement it into communities that have no access to that. Because why gatekeep knowledge, right? And I think it's really important to democratize education so that it's not only for people in urban areas, it's not only for people in cities, or it's not only for people who live in multicultural communities, but like regional and rural towns in Australia. And I think it's because I come from Bendigo, where multicultural literacy, whilst it has gotten better over the years, it wasn't always like that, right? And I think that's why I just want to spread knowledge of Indonesia, of Southeast Asia, of multiculturalism. And I want to create access for individuals who look like me, and make sure that there's greater representation in politics and in every space that you can think of. Yeah.
Brilliant. We're working on it, Eki. Brilliant. I'm going to finish with one very simple question to both of you, and then we'll open up to the floor. Eki and Wes, what's your favourite food?
Are you asking Australian food or Indonesian food?
Favourite?
Oh, well, well, at the moment, well, one of the, I don't know if I have a favorite food, but let me just say that one of the food that I cook to impress my friends is rendang, which is pretty much like an Indonesian like beef stew. And I'm currently cooking one at the moment. It's simmering at the moment, and but like my friend's taking care of it, so it's great. But yeah, so I love rendang, and I've cooked like the rendangs quite often. And some of my friends are vegan and like vegetarian, and so I've also learned to kind of like cater to their palates and to their kind of dietary requirements. And so instead of like using beef, I would use like mushrooms or potatoes and carrots, and they turn out really well as well. So I guess not trying to toot my own horn, but I feel like it's one of my best dish that I could make. Other people might disagree, but at the moment it's still 10 out of 10.
Yeah, vegan rendang sounds awesome. Eki, what's your favorite food?
Since my dad is on the Zoom call, I'll have to say Irish stew. If I said anything else, he'd be offended. No. It's because when I was younger, my dad would make my brother and I Irish stew, despite it being super hot and super humid in Indonesia. So you just had a hot bowl of stew in humid Indonesia. And maybe it's not the stew itself, but it definitely brings good memories. And it's just like something from childhood that makes me happy.
So nice. Hello, Eki's dad. That must be, is that Alan? Hello, Alan. Yeah. Awesome. We'll open up now. Is there anybody who wants to ask Eki or Wes a question, or is there anybody who wants to share something? Ian, go.
Oh, well, I was going to ask Eki and Wes what surprised you about Australia. But first, I just want to tell you something that surprised me about Indonesia, which was the second country I ever went to overseas. And that was how relaxed and tolerant people were about religion. Because I think Australians have an image of Indonesia as being Muslim, and our default idea about Muslims is that they're quite fundamentalist. But just as an example, we had a tour guide for one day in Solo. His name was Agus. He was Muslim, his father was Buddhist, his mother was Catholic Christian, and he had two sisters who were Protestant Christian. And from the way he described that, they were all very relaxed about that. And the second example was we were waiting at an airport in Lombok, and there were a group of young Muslim men and they were drinking alcohol. And I said to one of them, I thought you guys weren't supposed to drink alcohol. And he said, oh, that's just for the hard prayers. So I don't know if those two examples are representative of Indonesia as a whole, but those things surprised me about Indonesia. So I was going to ask what surprised you about Australia? And you might want to correct what I thought I had learnt by those examples I gave in Indonesia, if they were not representative.
No, I think if it's okay, Ericha and Joe, I just want to kind of like say, like, I mean, the things that Ian has mentioned, it's definitely true. There are several enclaves and societies in Indonesia which are very multicultural and very like relaxed and with everything like that. But it's also important to note that also I just want to apologize if you keep hearing like helicopter noises. That's my laptop being my laptop. As you know, I've got a bit of an issue with my laptop. Anyway, I think it's important to note that yes, there are societies and communities in Indonesia which are very open-minded and very multicultural. But then at the same time, as I you know, like just so that I'm in my own opinion, so that, you know, like just for the sake of clarity and being critical, you know, like as it is multicultural, there are also some issues in Indonesia in terms of like intolerance as well, which has been on the rise in the past few years. And so, and I think the Jokowi, the president, currently kind of like tried to sell Indonesia as a moderate Islam, which is to a degree, it is true. We're not as like hardline, you know, as for example, some of the like in the Middle Eastern countries. But at the same time, there are also aspects where, like, you know, parts of, you know, Indonesia which can be very fundamentalist per se. And so I think, I personally have seen a lot of cases where it wouldn't be a representative of how tolerant and multicultural Indonesia should be. And I think it's important to kind of like understand that these are like kind of two sides of the same coin. And as much as we like to say that Indonesia is a multicultural and tolerant country, there are also a lot of things that could be done better. I think like that's from my part. Something that surprised me about Australia is I think I got the impression before I moved to Australia for a little bit. I got the impression how individualistic Australians can be. That's what been taught to be, and generally speaking. And I think to a certain degree, and this is the same thing with Indonesian culture, to a certain degree, I believe it's true. But at the same time, there's just something really interesting with the fact that, like, yes, you know, like a lot of Australians could be very individualistic, but once you kind of like get to know them, like that kind of individualism kind of like being eroded with the sense of like, yes, you're my friend, you're my mate, you know, and then we would just hang out and we just like spend time together, you know, like, and then, you know, like talk about like the heavy hitting stuff, talk about like good stuff. And then I think that particular thing, I guess, it definitely takes time. It takes longer in Australia, but I think that's one thing that I feel like Australians in general, not really as individualistic as I thought it was back before I moved to Australia. Yeah, Ericha?
There are a lot of things that surprised me, but something that I just wanted to raise, I think minimum wage really surprised me. Just like the concept of like workers' rights and discussions and debates about exploitation and being entitled to, you know, pay, being entitled to pay for, you know, certain hours. I think that's definitely something that surprised me, like the differences in workplace culture. Mind you, I only came to Australia when I was 16, but I think when I was exposed to that, it just drew me to experiences that I've encountered in Indonesia and how different it is. I mean, in Indonesia, the middle class is definitely expanding, right? And then introduction of new things as well. But when I first moved here, when I was hearing about how much people were getting paid for certain jobs, that really took me by surprise. And just the differences in, for example, prices, just like as something as simple as food prices, and how food in Australia is generally more expensive because people get paid a bit more, right? So the price of things definitely took me by surprise. The price of rent, another thing that took me by surprise. But it's just like that small everyday thing that you learn as you kind of navigate adult life. Yeah.
Wow, that's two really interesting answers, Ian. I think we only have time for one more question. Does somebody else have a question for Eggy and Wes? And you can pop it into the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask it. Otherwise, I'm going to make Eggy's dad ask them a question. That'll be fun.
Oh,
He'll know all the dirt. All right, Ian. Oh, here we go. Indonesia in 1991. Yep, thanks, Ian. Ian, do you have another question? Oh, here we go. Yep, Kasuma or Yanti?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, may I ask?
Yes, please do. Can you tell me, is your name Kasuma or Yanti?
Yanti, you can call me
Yanti. I got it wrong. Ask your question,
Okay.
Yanti.
Oh, hello, Ericha. Hello, Mas Wisnu. Okay, maybe I want to ask here how you guys as a youth and also like you have help Indonesian or help Australian, how you guys maintain the relationship between youth in Australia and youth in Indonesia, and how you can make it more stronger in collaboration and networking. What kind of, like after AIYEP maybe, or in AYA, what kind of movement that you think you need to do more after the program or during the program? Thank you.
You first, Wes?
Oh, okay.
And years
Sure.
experience.
Oh God. Okay. Well, I'm speaking on behalf of Australia Indonesia Youth Association. Not really. Yeah. I mean, so AYA is basically the NGO that I'm currently at as well, and I believe Ericha is also part of AYA as well. And so I think I'm gonna be a bit honest. Yes, like as much as what we do definitely helps in terms of like the people-to-people relationships, there's not a lot of stuff that we can do if the government doesn't really support us. And if you know the issues of Indonesian language, the issue of like Indonesian language in Australia is that it has been on a steady decline since like for over a decade, and you know, and we do, and in AYA we do believe that, you know, like strong people-to-people relationship, youth-to-youth, you know, relations between young Australians and young Indonesians will be beneficial in the long run, as it becomes like the foundation of, for example, political relationships. Because at the end of the day, you know, the relationship between Australia and Indonesia can be broken down into the individuals, the top-level individuals who are kind of like talking and, you know, like conducting this particular public diplomacy, for example. And while we are at the moment trying to see if we could contribute in a particular relationship, in the particular topic or like the subject in our own way, there's not a lot we can do if the government doesn't support us either. And by support, I mean, it's not just, you know, it's not just saying that, yes, you know, these NGOs exists or like that, we really support you, but like actually taking the necessary steps for them, for Indonesian to be, Indonesian language, for example, to be more highly regarded again. And, you know, by, you know, like by, for example, you know, like increasing funding to language schools in general. And then, and also, for example, another example is, you know, providing more funding towards like Australian initiatives. There's a lot of initiatives like the youth-to-youth relationship. Youth-to-youth initiatives in Australia, and it's not just AYA. There's also the AIYEP, which is what Ericha is currently doing, And there's also Australia-China Youth Association. There's also like with Australians and Japan as well. There's also the ACT, Australia-ASEAN Youth Strategic Youth Partnership. There's a lot of like youth-to-youth diplomacy initiatives happening at the moment in this particular sphere. But I understand that due to COVID, the government had to refocus their particular interest and strategies. But unfortunately, as much as we would like to help, build this particular connection, our capacity is pretty much limited. And so it would be fantastic if we can get like more concrete support from, government. And again, like we're doing our own thing, but if there are policies and strategies that the government can, and government, I meant like Australians and also Indonesian government, if there are policies and strategies that they can kind of like implement that kind of like in line with the way that we do things, with our values, and I feel like that would definitely like be a really good thing in the future. But yeah, Ericha?
I agree with everything that you've said. With government support and not only providing funding, but making sure that access to funding is clear and transparent, especially for civil societies, multicultural organizations, etc. Right? And I think as well, just touching upon your point of language and how language learning in Australia is quite weak. And I think that we're missing upon such a big opportunity with, languages. And because when you learn another language, you're learning another culture. Not only that, but language can give you access to your neighbors, right? Southeast Asia, Australia's closest neighbors, yet not many Australians speak Indonesians, yet many Indonesians speak English. And I think that's something that can definitely be improved on. But not only that, I'm just going to say it how it is with my experiences in youth organizations and how I only got into them when I moved to Canberra. Right. So when I was in Bendigo, there wasn't that much of an opportunity. Victoria was located in Melbourne, right? So even trying to engage with youth organizations and opportunities that urban areas might have, it's just not, it was beyond me when I was living in like a regional area. And I suppose I'm a bit more optimistic than Wes in this. I think that, as an individual, I might not be able to make the biggest impact, right? But I do know, especially from my experiences in AIYA, in AIYEP, in PPIA ACT, there are like-minded individuals. There are people who think like me, right? And I hope that I can build the network from AIYEP and tap that potential in democratizing education and access, especially in regional areas, because opportunities should not be limited and bounded by only in cities. I think that areas within Australia, such as even just like Queanbeyan, not that far off from Canberra, right? Even Queanbeyan, I think, or the Snowy Mountains, for example, I think youth from that area should be given the same opportunities as youths in Canberra. Whether it's access to organizations, whether it's access to funding, access to rights, access to leadership. And this is why I'm really trying as best as I can to leverage the networks that I've created. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe with a group of friends in a coffee shop, we can think of something that'll solve a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, all the great movements started.
Yeah.
Wes and Eki, thank you so much. This has been an absolute delight. Anybody who came in late or anybody who wanted to come and missed out, we podcast this, so you can see a link on my Facebook, or you can see it on the ACT Greens website. And that has just been marvellous. Goodness, we've covered a lot. We've got bosses and identity and being a minority, and we've got mateship, and we've got individualisation, and we've covered a lot of ground in one session thing. It's always fascinating. So I want to welcome everybody who's popped in for the first time. It's really nice to see you. We run these on the first Wednesday of each month. We'll be taking a break over Christmas, but we'll be back in February next year. And it would be great if we could see you all back there. Wes, good luck with the job hunting. We are all,
Thank you so much.
everything crossed. Everything crossed. I'm sure you'll set up again at home as well as you did here. And Eki, it was so nice to Zoom you and meet you. And I hope everybody has a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Ian.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.